Hello, welcome. This is Xander Davis at xanderdavis.com, xanderdavis.com, and welcome to my commentary track. Today we're doing Prometheus. I've got the standard Blu-ray, and we'll just kick it off right from the play menu. Before we do that, I'll just mention that if you go to my other site, loremethod.com, Lore, you will find I have a sort of a similar style project going on there called Umbra. It's a sort of a Lovecraftian sci-fi space adventure horror that has to do with secret space programs set in the 80s and involving remote projection through the cosmos. So yeah, you can check that out at loremethod.com. All right, so I will just hit play here and we'll jump right in. So I will do a countdown for you. All right. I'm going to hit play in 3, 2, 1. Okay, now on the Blu-ray it's showing the Motion Picture Association of America rating. So I'll kind of tell you, because if you're doing like a stream, okay, it just started now with the 20th Century Fox logo, in case you're streaming it or something. All right, so yeah, this came out 5 years ago, and I was living in Vegas at the time, working at Petroglyph Studios, and I really enjoyed it. No, actually, I think yeah. So I really enjoyed it, and I was also kind of like a little let down that it really didn't scare me as much as I was hoping it did or could. And I think there's kind of a winding story to how this came about. This was written originally by John Spates, who pitched right away, right off the top of his head, that if he was going to do a prequel to Alien, directed by Ridley Scott in 1979, that it would about the space jockey that they encounter in the Fallen Derelict, that it would have to sort of be about us, humanity's story. That you can't really have these elephant men in these suits with these space helmets with a snout or proboscis on it, like you can't have them walking around in some alien language, that he thought underneath they'd have to be sort of humanoid. And this must have really resonated with Ridley Scott, who has been doing lately a lot of Bible films as well as space films. And it's really interesting. I don't know if Ridley Scott's becoming more religious, or if he's just generally religious and always has been interested in these ideas, or if the ideas of sort of ancient alien astronauts visiting Earth and sort of intervening and being sort of responsible for humanity's rise, if this is kind of in the zeitgeist now and really kind of something to really sink your teeth into with all that we know about space and other planets in the broader universe now. Not only our own galaxy, but our local galactic supercluster, all the way out, like for just incredible, vast amounts. That's fantastic. And so John Spates' original screenplay was very good. I have a copy of it. It's a great read. I highly recommend it. You can probably find it online. And there were a lot of really cool ideas. And I think the funny thing is it's kind of a little more alien than what Prometheus actually ended up being. They brought on Damon Lindelof, I think, from Lost. I think that's his last name. And this is kind of the film he's known for now, for kind of screwing it up, apparently. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on him. I actually like Prometheus, the film. I think this is a really good film. And the more I watch it, the more I like it. The more there is to really think about. And so I actually, if his contribution was to de-alien this film and have it be Prometheus and have it be its own thing and go off on its own direction, I think that was really interesting, honestly. Around I think it was 2014, I played Alien Isolation on PlayStation 4 and absolutely loved it. And it actually made me fall in love even more than I ever had been with the original 1979 film, Ridley Scott film, Alien. It really made me appreciate lo-fi sci-fi as an aesthetic and really kind of fall in love with that sort of push-button technology in this age where everything's flat screens and little black squares we're carrying around in our pockets all the time. And there's a sleekness now to sci-fi that's a little too sleek. It's sort of devoid of a lot of charm, and I think that sort of lo-fi sci-fi aesthetic has a ton of charm, especially now. It's I'm working on another project, a video game project that kind of is a fictitious 1995 video game console that I'm kind of creating the spec to design under it, and that's at starbase24.games. So you can check that out too. But I just sort of love the idea of going back to that and using that as an aesthetic, and I'm doing that in Umbra at Lore Method as well. So, not to get it too off topic, but this all kind of dovetails back into Ridley Scott's current style is very sleek, and he's got a very beautiful photographic approach now that's a little more minimalist than his detail saturated approach in Alien and Blade Runner. There's tons of detail in this, like this shot of Scotland or wherever they are now. Like it's everything's shot in 4 or 6K, whatever, but mastered certainly in 4K. So but it's different. It's art directed, but it's somehow less artistic, if that makes any sense. It's sort of like very specifically laid out, but it feels just very clean and undesigned. And that's very odd for Ridley Scott, where I would say the number one thing he brought to Alien was a sense of production design and how to fill the frame with such detail. And that's just kind of, you just kind of want to get your hands on it. Like so there's also this weirdness that, in the 1979 Alien, that it's all, truckers in space, it's all grungy, and then this is all super sleek. But it does kind of make sense too, that this is like the, they're literally taking the boss out. Wayland is aboard this project, so this ship would, spare no expense. This would be the state of the art. This might be, decades ahead of what, anybody else is getting, certainly truckers in space. So all of that makes sense, amazingly. But I just kind of think that Ridley Scott just didn't want to return to that lo-fi sci-fi aesthetic. And it's sort of funny because when Alien Isolation did it, it didn't really feel like I was playing a game set in the 70s. It still felt like the future, but it felt like the 70s vision of the future. And that was kind of the identity of the first Alien, at least. And this really kind of goes in a whole different direction. It sort of is like, well, this is the state of the, sci-fi paint that we've got now, and we're going to go with that. And I don't know if it's avoidable or not, but I've got the art book for Alien Isolation. Sometimes I play through it just to look at the art direction of that is phenomenal. And I think it's phenomenal in this too. And here we have Michael Fassbender. He just walked in the room as David. And so, by the way, spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about the new information. I mentioned this, but definitely going to be talking about the new information that we've gained from the new movie. So in this new trilogy, it really seems that well, it might be a sequel or a series. This may be more than 3 films. It's sounding like that's what Ridley Scott wants to do. So in this whole new sort of tangential sort of reboot of Alien that they're going with now, the main character seems to be David. He's the Ripley of this franchise. He's going to be the one that's in these movies. I thought the character of Daniels was pretty flat. I think Noomi Rapace in this, who plays Elizabeth Shaw, was actually much, much more compelling. In fact, I thought all of the characters in this were more compelling. Some of them are not likable, or some of it seems kind of artificial, like, or forced, like Milburn and Fifield sort of seem like they're meant to be that dynamic, you know. They're so it kind of is like we're kind of trying to recreate the magic that the original cast had in the 79 film, where they could sit around a table and just talk and make it up, and it was all natural. And they, you know, it's weird too. We've lived with the original film for decades now, and so we really know those characters. Especially if you're a fan, you know those characters. In Alien Covenant, we barely spent time getting to know any of the characters. I think the way that they conveyed character was very deftly done for the style that they wanted to do, which was just get on with it. I'm actually looking forward to getting the paperback book novelization, and I know movie novelizations, but I kind of enjoy them now, especially since I'm writing more kind of in this cinematic sci-fi approach to novel writing now. So anyway, but the reason I'm interested in that is, like, I think the novel, this will be kind of one of the rare few cases where a sort of a big budget Hollywood sci-fi horror movie like this is actually going to be enriched by the novel, because it's probably going to spend more time on the characters. And like here, for example, we're spending a lot of time with David really looking at some very bizarre personality stuff going on, where he's into Lawrence of Arabia, and he's a super fan of, he's dyeing his hair blonde, and he's mimicking him, which is what, a lot of children do. I certainly did. I'd watch movies and mimic, and so David is, kind of compared to how he is in Covenant, he's sort of in the boy state right now. He's sort of, he kind of feels like he's a teenager or something right now. And he felt like he was a man in Covenant, and we like David. And David, Fassbender as David steals the show completely in this movie. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, that if Ridley Scott was always planning that Fassbender would be in the series and he would end up being central to it. Got some coffee here. But yeah, there's a lot more character going on in this, and actually after having seen Covenant and then watching this, I'm appreciating the way this movie handles their characters so much more, and I think Covenant piggybacks a lot off of at least David, certainly, but there's a lot of stuff that it stood on top of on this movie. And Ridley Scott was recently quoted as saying he thought Prometheus was a mistake. And basically, I read that, and I read the article about that, and everything that he said in that I thought was wrong. As a fan of Alien, I've actually grown to appreciate Prometheus for what it is. I used to think that, wow, the guys at Critical Assembly who did Alien Isolation beat Ridley Scott at his own game. They made a direct sequel to Alien that actually felt like a direct sequel to Alien, and not Aliens, and not any of the other stuff around Aliens, and not Alien versus Predator. It was a direct sequel to Alien. It basically assumed that the rest of the movies didn't exist, but it still worked tangentially and in parallel with those completely. And I said that after, I must have tweeted or something, and I said that after this has been out for a while, Prometheus, and basically seeing that he did a sequel to Alien, but his approach was to not repeat himself, essentially, and so he pretty much did. He, even though these reboots often follow the same pattern of the thing they're sort of rebooting, that aesthetically he really tried to go in a different direction, but still there are things in it that feel alien, so it's tricky. It's a tricky thing to nail down and describe, but that, all of these people here, they feel like they're from, Silicon Valley, and like they're just like today, like I don't it's odd. That character on the left there, we don't really see him. I guess he dies in the hangar later, but there's like some people floating around on board that we never even really know. Now, I do like these characters. When I watched this the first time, I was certainly like, yeah, they're really trying to create a dynamic. And when it's a sequel or sequel/reboot, you're sort of wondering like, well, is this forced or is this real magic going on? But again, after having seen this more and more, the characters grow on me. You sort of know them. I know their names now. Like that's, LeChance there or Chance. Okay, maybe I don't know their names, but just these bit players kind of, I've kind of like took an interest in them, at least in terms of the story. And yeah, so I mean, this is now the whole thing with Wayland's makeup here is weird. In the original script, there was supposed to, it was either in the script or in the concept art that they kind of blocked out this potential scene where David would use the dream helmet to communicate with Wayland while he was in cryo and give him a status update. And they cut all that out, and that scene where he's communicating with him is in the movie, but they cut out the dream that Wayland was having, and Wayland was going to be in the, on a yacht somewhere, super future yacht, in the prime of his life, surrounded by beautiful women, and David would be there with him. And so that's why they cast a young actor to play this old man instead of just casting an old man. The intro scene that we have in Covenant was a treat too, because it was a older Wayland than we saw in the TED Talk sort of viral clip that they put out, which was actually really great, but certainly younger than this. So, right here, just watching this scene kind of takes on new context. Every interaction that we have with Wayland and David now is going to take on new context as I watch this. Because we sort of know now that David is possibly seething with rage, but, being an android, he's totally capable of hiding all of it. He really has come to feel abused by his father, and that he could never live up to his father, and all of this stuff that turns into resentment and turns into this he must destroy humanity plot, by the second movie in this series. So I want to get that Rubik's Cube. Yeah, this is really cool, and I've done some research into this stuff too, and it's kind of Umbra takes this in a different direction, but yeah, once you read the Bible or like at least read Genesis and then start thinking of it in the context of ancient aliens, the Bible starts to make a little more sense. So who knows, but yeah, there are sort of patterns between ancient cultures, and Um, there's a lot of artwork that they left behind, inscriptions and things that really do sort of hint that the gods might have been ancient aliens. And the universe is so vast, the idea that we're fairly young, we might be minor, and that there are way older humanoid species throughout the galaxy is, yeah, it's, the longer that, or like the more that you sort of think about how vast the universe is, how ancient it is, it's totally plausible. It's totally plausible. We're at a point now, I remember growing up where I think, if you believed in aliens, you were kind of a kook. And now, that we have all of this, in the information age, and we can all kind of catch up on models of the universe and all that we know. And now NASA is discovering not only planets by the fistful every week, but potentially human habitable zone planets. And it's almost like, no, it's mathematically impossible that we're alone. The only way, the Fermi paradox says, well, given how vast and old the universe is, where are all the aliens? They should be everywhere. So the only way that the Fermi paradox would actually make sense to me, I might actually do something with this idea, is that we're in a simulation. That this is the Matrix in a way, some kind of Matrix, but maybe built by aliens or something, and Earth is some kind of simulation where they didn't populate the rest of the simulation with aliens. But given sort of everything else that we seem to know, it just seems absolutely certain that there has to be alien life out there. I don't know if it's humanoid. I don't know if it's intelligent, but just in probability, the universe is ridiculously big. It's possibly infinite. But what we've mapped out is insanely big, insanely big. And from that alone, even in our own galaxy, absolutely, there are aliens out there. Absolutely. It's just math. It's just math. There has to be. So when you really start thinking about us, yeah, we've got to be young kids, or we've got to be older than we know. I thought this set was really great, and Fassbender pouring vodka was fantastic, like that. And I love this. She's in this shark skin type suit, and she sits in front of these savanna, like Africa, waving grass. It sort of makes me think she's like this tiger, or this lioness. There's a lot of great stuff going on in the frame right here. And yeah, doubly so with the, not having the lo-fi stuff go on in this movie. You got to imagine Wayland is possibly the richest man in the solar system. He's developing the solar system right now at this point. He may own vast chunks of Mars, if not all of it. So, yeah, this is like what the ultra, 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 ultra rich would be like in 2091 or whenever this is set. Wealth that extends a single world, multiple worlds, so multiple global economies, at that scale. Wayland would have a ship, yeah, that would be 200 years ahead of what truckers in space would be flying. Yeah, just chance. Okay. There was some other movie or game or something where the character was LeChance, but anyway. In the sort of the previs that they showed in the behind the scenes stuff, the engineers looked way bigger, and I think in the original Alien they are way bigger. They sort of scaled them down here because they actually had a human actor play the engineer, but not didn't even do like CG scaling of him. It's just him, I guess, in the frame, and I just thought that was such a missed opportunity. Like, it's so much more foreboding that these engineers would be 15 feet tall, not 10 or 9 feet tall, you know? I like this planet. It's clearly like Reykjavik, but that's a cool shot. It's almost like a shmup, shoot 'em up. And how many video games in the 80s were inspired by Ridley Scott's Alien? How many video games in the 90s? How many video games since video games? I always thought, oh, I'm blanking on his name. I can't believe it. The guy who plays the captain. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. I know it. Um, but anyway, I always thought his American cowboy voice was just totally fake. You know, he's naturally, speaking with a British Cockney accent that's pretty thick. So yeah, awesome ship. Yeah, so with how old the original Alien is, and now how old Prometheus is, and how I've watched it more and I like it more, I think I'll probably feel that way with Covenant. Um, I may even go see it a third time. I love the Alien universe, and Ridley Scott returning to Alien is just like, yes. But we left the theater, my wife and I, thinking Prometheus was better. um, and a lot of people don't like Prometheus, but we actually really like Prometheus. So, and that's interesting too, because I don't think she's seen the original Alien films, but she did see Prometheus, when it came out. So she's kind of coming in to this fresh. And she really likes David and was sad to see that he kind of became the real villain, not the xenomorph, really. It's really David now. This scene, this right here, this is critical. Why aren't you wearing a suit? You're not really human. You don't need it. Yeah, that's huge, actually. That chunk of dialogue, that really is a lot going on. Yeah, David is a user interface. He's really an ultra advanced AI that far surpasses human intellect, but he's sort of pared down into this humanoid form as he described as a user interface feature, so that basically he would be effective in interacting with humans and make them comfortable. And then we find out in the next movie he was still too human, or they actually made him too human, and that was uncomfortable. And so they made Walter, and Walter is more machine-like. Yeah. I never really thought the actor who plays Shaw's husband, Charlie Holloway, I never really thought he was right for this role. I like him. I just don't think he was right for this role. He does a good job. I just don't think he was right for this role. I sort of see Shaw actually marrying, especially when I read the original Spates script, someone more like Alan Grant, you know? And hell, to actually have Holloway played by, God, I'm blanking on all of these names right now. I'm usually an encyclopedia on this stuff. Sam Neill. Yeah, especially now at his more advanced age, I think that would actually be great because I sort of see her being like this younger associate professor at some university that ended up going on all these expeditions with an older archaeologist, and they developed a romance. And here we have this guy who seems like he could have been cast on Rescue Me, working for FDNY. You know, like I get that vibe from him, you know, and I think he was from New York, and like I said, I like him. I just totally think it was miscast. I haven't seen him in anything else either. I wonder if he does a lot of stage stuff, but I hope he gets some good roles. Idris Elba, that's the name. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That's Rafe Spall, not Fifield Milburn. It was funny too in Covenant when they're exploring. They come up on the derelict. They start exploring the derelict, and they don't really seem weirded out or alarmed at all. They don't seem to feel like this is some monumental discovery. They don't stop and say, "Holy shit, we just found evidence of alien life." You know, to them it was probably like, well, it makes sense if this is a right smack in the habitable zone, but presumably no one has found alien life yet, and this is a first. It's possible in this universe that by this point in their history they have, but maybe it's not anything like a humanoid or an intelligent life form. It could just be some animals or fish. But what they're really exploring here is their creators, potentially. So that's a much even more grand thing. By 2090 something, I don't know honestly, if we've really gotten that far out of our solar system yet. In terms of travel, but they seem to have cryo working out real well. It could be advanced tech at this point, so not a lot of people get to use cryo. This could be an insanely expensive expedition at this point in time in the universe. So everybody here kind of groans when they finally take off their helmets. They're like, no, because we all know this is a horror movie. We all know where this is going. And we're all paranoid right now that any little spore might infect them. But I do buy it that Charlie would come all of this way and fuck it. He's got to take off his helmet. But it is insanely stupid. Any other planet, there's a whole different biome, microbiome everywhere. So the air could be 100% matched with Earth, but the microbes floating around on everything could be completely different. So yeah, we're all gonna potentially get infected all at once. Yeah, real astronauts would not do this, but real astronauts aren't out here on this private expedition, are they? This is a company job. Amateurs. um, so back on the note of whether Ridley Scott is religious, I think he clearly is. I don't know if he's a creationist flat out. He, ex- especially in the space script, they explain a little more that life was already in the works, and what the engineers did was augment the direction of its evolutionary path. So he was sort of saying evolution exists, but there was some intervention that essentially was creationism, not the full on creationism that a supreme being just said there's a human and then a human appeared. So this is a little more. I think this is actually really interesting that it kind of opens the debate up a little bit more. It's not so black and white. There's some middle ground, and it seems to like the more you think about it, the more it seems very, very plausible, especially with how we have literally found thousands of habitable worlds now, but maybe not the exact right one. We haven't, we're not sure we've ever, encountered a world that's exactly like Earth. So, assuming that planets in the habitable zone maybe aren't rare, but a planet exactly like Earth is super rare, where life is just teeming all over, can even take an asteroid impact and, still bounce back. Um, it would be quite a prize, wouldn't it? And it would sort of draw the attention of everyone else looking out there looking for other planets just like we are right now. And we're young at this space game. We're super young. Imagine a civilization that's been traveling the cosmos for hundreds of thousands of years, not just 100 years, or not even. We haven't even been. So imagine a species traveling the cosmos for millions of years. It is funny that they didn't cast a British actor to play Tennessee again, because that's exactly what they did here. He's supposed to be Tennessee here. But, in Covenant, they just said, okay, no, we actually need to get Danny McBride, who did a great job, by the way. A lot of comedians are actually they're very deft at making the transition to dramatic acting because comedy is incredibly complex. So if you don't even have to be funny, pulling off an act, it's totally within their wheelhouse. Well, and like even there, with Rafe Spall's shit's good, he's ready to go. Like he's a little like, nah, I'm out. That's comedy, that's where if you are a comedian and you're playing a dramatic role, you have a whole other like set of tools to work with. Yeah, I think just my biggest disappointment is that they've downsized the engineers in this. When you play Alien Isolation and they, spoiler alert, they go into the derelict in a flashback, the scale is very different. It is more on par with what the 79 film is. Or at least, I don't know that technically for sure, but it certainly just effectively comes off that way. And I mean, these engineers were supposed to be huge. I would say 15 feet, maybe between 15 20. Here they look pretty much just like tall humans. Yeah, this is a great reveal. The fact that it's a human face all the way out here in this alien ship that has like dirt in it and worms. Too bad we, kind of was the poster, so it wasn't a big surprise. I basically saw Alien Covenant before I saw Alien Covenant. I followed the website alien-covenant.com. It has great daily news and would post, scans of magazine articles and stuff. And the fans there would really speculate in the comments. So I sort of ruined it for myself a bit, but at least the surprise element, I pretty much knew exactly what was going to happen. But I did that to, as I'm creating Umbra, I didn't want to do the same things. That has happened to me so many times where I would kind of imagine something and then like shortly after see, a new movie is coming out that's exactly that idea. This black goo is cool, and I like the effect that they did, the practical effect of using a speaker to make the goo kind of dance and move. But there's a great quote that it's Daniel Dennett, philosopher. What you can imagine depends on what you know. And so if you're basically copy and pasting ideas that you've seen in other movies, well, so is everybody else. So you're probably going to end up coming up with similar ideas in the stream of the zeitgeist. And then, surprise, surprise, no wonder there's the movie that you thought of and they took your idea. So I really started looking outside the box a lot, looking into all sorts of stuff. And that's helped me kind of creatively branch out and not follow such similar formulas. And I think, kind of what they have popularized here was the ancient aliens idea, and even some sort of, some through Lovecraft, some occult theories, and sort of the restlessness of the elite who are so rich that money has lost all meaning, and the only thing left is what's the meaning of life, what's really going on, what secret knowledge is really out there. And Wayland pretty much expresses that in the opening scene of Covenant. This storm is awesome. This idea of a glass storm, that's fantastic. That design of that temple, that sort of non-pyramid, is out of the original sketches from the art department of the 79 Alien. I think Mobius did that. This is a great scene. I love the yellow caution lights that are going off on this lander leg here. There's a shot where it's top down, and they're just like from a sort of graphic design perspective, they just seem super aggressive in their motion graphic movement, And I love that. It's like a super violent graphic effect. because ultimately everything on screen is graphics, and designed in the frame. Yeah, that. Bam. I love that. That's just so punchy. So. David comes and saves the day. Ultimately, David is a psychopath, even in this movie. Like, he infects Holloway, but he's sort of told, as we see in Covenant, he is a servant, and he's made to serve. So if Wayland tells him to try harder, maybe I take it back. Maybe he's not psychopathic, but maybe he's just following orders, but he... maybe that's kind of where it starts to break for him. If you do it once, then the next time's a little easier, and the next is a little easier. And I like that little beat there by Idris. Like, yeah, great. Can you believe these guys? They, like, staticked out Go Fuck Themselves. Is this film not rated R? Like, what was the point of that? No, is that PG-13? No, it's rated R. Why the hell would they do that then? It makes no sense. That's something that's really sad that we've kind of lost. I was happy to see a return to ultra gore and violence, especially gore, in Covenant. I wish they even went further with it, honestly. I think everything has to be PG-13 now, essentially. Even this is pretty tame for an R-rated film. I think probably what got it the R rating was the alien C-section. Deservedly so. It's a great scene. They did shoot it twice for a PG or an R rating, and it was different levels of blood, different coloration in the blood. But if you're going to go R. Go all the way with it. Don't, they could have gone way more. That's so, I love that. That shot right there was just so, like, every single pixel on the screen was was a speck on that helmet. So detailed. So now they're like, oh, they're us. I mean, there were statues of human faces, so... But I guess this is the ultimate proof. I think she did a much better job than Catherine Watterson in Covenant. I like Catherine Watterson. I would not have cast her. And I think, the girl with the dragon tattoo, the OG, that was smart. That fits with the vibe of Alien. This really dark, just this darkness. I like this a lot. He's definitely an animatronic. Like, it just doesn't... I guess. I mean, there's a lot of physical stuff going on, the blood, and they're interacting with it, but he's probably a combination of the model and some CG. Love having exploding heads, but green blood, green brain. Come on. People were literally sliding unexpectedly several times on Slick Blood in Covenant, and I love that. That was so cool. Oh, that's an awesome shot. I love this space helmet dream, neuro dream communication. It's a cool design. So yeah, I don't know if these films just age like wine. If they get better and better, the more you watch them, the more you accept what they are and not what you wish they were, and the more you sort of see what they were going for. And frankly, they were, not a lot of science fiction movies in space are this deep. That's really the genius of Prometheus, is that this is hardly about aliens at all. I mean the xenomorph. It's hardly about the xenomorph. It's about us. And that's always going to be compelling. This is really funny. Like, first of all, I think she should play Samus Aran or Aaron, however they're pronouncing it now, in a Metroid film. This is purely an audition for that. No. But I love this. This is so deep and clever. This just like, yeah, she's the real deal, and he is the idealized child that Wayland really wanted. It says so much about their dynamic. It says so much about their dynamic with Wayland, Wayland's dynamic with them, Wayland himself, the kind of ego that would build a robot boy that he would love and think is more ideal than his actual flesh and blood child. So this is cool that they are literally human. Literally human. And that is kind of like a big moment that's almost, it's just kind of forgotten. We're just moving on. So again, when you kind of watch these and watch them over and over again, you sort of pick up on these moments a little more. I think in the theater when I saw this, I almost didn't believe it. I'm like, well, they're not literally human. They're different. They got to have some genetic difference. Like, that can't be right. I almost didn't accept it. I almost thought it was like bad writing. But I suppose there could be minor mutations that, or just, growing up on a different planet for hundreds of thousands of years, they would look different. Adapt, But fundamentally, it would be the same DNA. I love this shot. This is actually, or this scene. This was a scene that I picked to recreate as a test when I was experimenting with virtual filmmaking. I actually set up a green screen studio in my house and wanted to see if it was possible, if I could kind of do the, I want to say Conran, the director who did Sky Captain, if it was possible to essentially shoot an entire movie on green screen. I mean, I know it's possible. It's been done, but if it was possible for me, if in Ohio, if I could actually escape the fact that I'm limited by what's in Ohio, that if, I could shoot anywhere essentially and build any set virtually. So I studied this scene quite a bit. I acted both parts. It was pretty much the scene shot for shot, but what I ended up shooting, I rewrote the dialogue and changed the characters, and it was more specific to a project I was working on back then. But it was purely a test. And the green screen worked, the construction of it worked, but where I kind of got hung up was the modeling. I just got Moto. I had Maya for a while, but my learning curve, I'm not a modeler. So I'm not in there day to day. I'm not constantly working on becoming a modeler. So it was all, that's kind of where it all kind of hit the brakes for me. It was a good project though for me to get familiar with modeling. So this whole thing, yeah, I take it back. I don't think he's psychopathic here. I think he's following the orders of his creator, and he's probably programmatically bound to follow those orders. He sort of has to. But as we see, getting your head ripped off maybe, and having your creator, die in the end, that might have been the thing that ultimately allowed him to really come into his own. I think they even talk about that. I think David says, don't we wish all of our parents would die so we can come into our own? So when David comes into his own, we see him by the time of Covenant, and he's engineering biomechanical killing machines. He has daddy issues that he has extended out to all of humanity. And if his father is presumably the richest human, or one of them, that, he could clearly infer that as indicative of the entire species then, if that was supposedly the best humanity had. Um, the new alien, the white alien, they actually concepted that in this film, and I think they were going to run with that as the iconic alien of this film, and I totally wish they would have. It would have been so great from the paintings I saw, but I thought the implementation in Covenant was a little lacking. I expected something much more menacing than what we got. We sort of got this hopping jackrabbit killer, and I think something that moved just as slow as the xenomorph could have been terrifying. The fact that it bounced around and ran around so much, I kind of thought made it not. This whole moment, what is he doing? Like they really make this. They set this up. There's a thing in Alien of somebody's watching everybody else on the monitors get fucked, basically, and there's a sort of implication that the company is maybe wanting this to happen, but the captain here would have no motive for them to die. So I think in that moment he's looking at them like, these guys are probably going to die. But the way it was shot and the way it was framed and the music cues, it sort of makes you wonder if he wants them to maybe stumble around in there and for the good of the company, if they're expendable and he knows it. But I don't think that's what's going on in the actual character, but that is certainly what's going on in the frame. They reshot this. They did a whole alternate thing where they had a fight, and it was kind of this knockdown, drag-out fight that then ended up in sort of angry makeup sex, and it just didn't play well, so they reshot it. And I like this a lot. I think this really makes us like them a lot more, which is great, because then we actually are sad when Holloway dies, and we feel for her a lot more, and that was a smart move. But yeah, this whole thing with Shaw sort of stubbornly being of faith, and then they sort of said that again with Billy Crup's character in Covenant, which, in this future time seems to be super unpopular, even more so than it is now, honestly. And I tell you what, I used to be an atheist for a long time, but the older I've gotten, the more I've seen, the more I'm just like, well, I don't know if it's a bearded man in the clouds, but I certainly know there's more than meets the eye. You'd have to be a fool to think that only what can be measured with rulers is all there is. So I'm kind of on board Ridley's perspective here. And I think his films, honestly, kind of helped me get there by looking at quasi-biblical ideas in a more sci-fi lens with everything that we know now, I think it all makes total sense. And that was great too, that she can't conceive, and that is ringing a bell with what we end up seeing in Covenant, where it looks like maybe these eggs were biomechanically grown out of her carcass, or maybe she birthed the first egg because he infected her or something, and he had to cut it out of her or something. Not sure what was going on there, but I think she's the original queen. And maybe, in as far as Ridley Scott is concerned, James Cameron's queen doesn't exist. It's possible he's gonna take that attitude to it. This is a fun scene. It's kind of, I guess it's a good, it's a good moment of levity to have. It's really great, honestly, especially since we're all kind of wondering too, yeah, is she a robot? And then he just comes out and asks her, and she's like, I'll show you how much of a robot I'm not. They cut a scene that I thought was actually pretty good, but was kind of talky and redundant, where after she burns Holloway, she's in her room and he comes to see her, and she's a bit cold about it all, but that may be a defensive thing. And I thought it was a good scene. So yeah, if you've got the Blu-ray, I would recommend checking that stuff out. Love this UI work. It's great stuff going on. Again, it's super slick. It never really felt very alien to me, but the original Alien was like DOS or something. So graphics made on pre-DOS machines. Yeah, they actually would have been pre-DOS machines, I think. Well, that's one way to get laid. I don't know if asking a woman if she's a robot is a pickup line that works every time, but when Idris Elba says it, perhaps it works every time. No, that's really great, and that sort of verifies to us too that, and then that sort of reinforces all of the stuff going on with David and Wayland and her father and her. Yeah, come on. He's traveled all this way. He's on an alien planet and he's gonna get stoned. I guess people do dumb stuff. It just seems like just kind of a wink and a nod to all the stoners in the audience, and it's like, oh, I don't buy it that this elite scientist on the elite payroll of the elite Whaling Corporation would have someone do something that irresponsible. But then again, we're about to have a whole symphony, a whole cacophony of stupid go on here. People basically making dumb, like this scene in particular. If I would see that, if I'm on an alien planet, he is a xenobiologist, I guess, right? So he would be super interested, but I really, really want Ridley Scott to stop ruining vaginas for everyone. We get it. This alchemy being played here with sexual organs. Although thematically it does make sense. We're all talking about creation and life and evolution, and you know, that essentially involves sexual organs. So we have sexual organ monsters everywhere. We've got a vagina snake that then fillets Rafe Spall and kills him that way. or the other way around, or however that, I'm not sure. Whatever. This is great though. I love that line, especially in the trailer. That, oh man, that gave me creeps, chills. You know. Yeah, it's a penis, and now he's just bathed in the goo. And the face hugger, I guess, has a little. It looks like a flaccid penis that he, I guess, shoves down the whatever. Thanks, Giger. A lot of people thought the original Alien was a metaphor for the AIDS virus, the whole movie. I think everybody denied. They were like, no, not at all. But possibly unconsciously it was, even to them, and they just didn't really know it. There had to be something in the air, and that, in that sort of time, that was a big fear everywhere. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have removed your helmet. I mean, honestly, he could have been infected just from that. Not that David actually gave him the mutagen. That's all what we were thinking. But yeah, try harder. And here's where things all finally go off the deep end. Cool temple look. Yeah, it happens all the time. It's it's a big thing in Alien, I guess, to have people of authority watch you through the screen. It's very similar to what we're doing as the audience watching them. I wonder if there's some sort of um, I guess it's very postmodern. You could say it's a postmodern moment to have. We're watching someone watch the characters. We're watching a character watch a character. And we have omniscience in terms of the story, at least to what we're shown, whereas the characters in the story have their own limited perspectives. So, but yet we tend to watch an authority figure watch subordinates. So that's sort of levels of knowledge going on in descending order. I think about weird stuff like that. It's like I'm always trying to like analyze context, and this is cool. This chamber. It's kind of weird that like David cut her off and she's like, "You son of a bitch, cut me off," and yet she's still watching him. So he didn't really cut her off. Just cut off her mic, I guess. This chamber needed to be about Oh, okay. I was remembering it ahead of the movie. Yeah, okay. He does cut her off completely. Yeah, I just feel like this needed to be like 140% the size that it is. It's still huge, but it seems small compared to the original, or just how we're remembering the original. I don't know. We'll have to compare. It's really weird that we become the monsters in this through mutation, and which is why this isn't called Alien, I suppose. And in Alien, now the xenomorph is not even really alien. Created by David. David was created by man. But, evolution, I guess. You could all, you could look at it from the perspective of whatever comes after us is going to seem alien just as much as whatever has come before, or tangential, or in parallel. So it sort of redefines the idea of alien, really, from a evolutionary standpoint. Which, so, for all of the creationism ideas in this, it's still very much into evolution. It's like we're watching artificial evolution, on steroids, on a time lapse here, on warp speed. Which is weird. There are easier ways to kill things, so this whole idea of a bioweapon that has to slowly mutate people and turn people into monsters that kill other people, but then then your cleared out world is filled up with monsters. I would assume they eventually die out. Problem solved. So if you want to like completely eliminate all life on a planet, maybe that's how it would work, while still keeping the planet intact. Yeah, see, like right there, it's interesting. The more I watch, the more I think, the more I question, and the more I sort of make up the answers, whether they had the answers or not. And that's a really good, interesting writing technique. And I think Damon Lindelof, I think that's his name. Maybe he's getting a bum rap. It's hard to say. I guess the older this gets, the longer we keep watching it, and especially what comes of the series now, that will all sort of determine things. That's a weird choice. Yeah, let's have him play a flute. Okay. And then the flute became a huge thing in the next movie. And it even became a sort of device hinting at some sort of romance between David and Walter. I do love that the theme that we're listening to now ends up being, in terms of the story, it ends up being a song that David wrote for Shaw. So the Prometheus theme has become now this eulogy. And so rewatching it and knowing that, it's like, wow, okay, we're at a funeral. Literally. But in the original context of watching this seems to be the engineer's theme. Or maybe it's just a theme of discovery or human wonder. It's certainly not a eulogy. But again, yeah, like, or is it like we could be on this grand, glorious path to discovering our end. Who knew our own extinctions could be so wondrous? It's great, I love this. I love this movie. I love the depth and the ideas. I love how it does push the franchise further, and honestly, it's really the only thing that's given it actual substance, because all Alien ever was just a slasher film with a final girl. Even though that was unintentional, Ripley was originally written as a man. Texas Chainsaw Massacre had just come out, and Ridley Scott was obsessed with that. So, the whole idea of that formula of the killer in the house and the final girl, that was all happening back then. So that's the level of depth that film was, and that this IP had until Prometheus. So for as much shit as Prometheus gets, I think it's owed a lot more credit. And I guess the fact that it takes some time to kill him like this makes sense, because he only got a drop, whereas in Covenant we see that those canisters are released and it just sprays out over everybody in massive quantities. I don't know, moments like this where she's got to get a flamethrower because Ripley had a flamethrower, so let's do a flamethrower again. Yes, it sort of makes sense with where this is going, but it just feels contrived by the marketing department. So, I like what happens here. I think it's great for the story, but at the same time, it's just like, we're doing flamethrowers again because Ripley had a flamethrower. Okay. That's not why Aliens was a great movie, because Ripley had a flamethrower. That's sort of the level of thinking we get in a lot of these big budget movies now, where they're, especially these reboots, where they're trying to give us icons of the past. So we're like, oh, I remember that. Or it just triggers those feelings. But we never saw somebody torch someone in cold blood. I don't think that was in Aliens, so it's a little more hardcore. But he's in a spacesuit, so that's PG-13, honestly. So I think this whole sequence here is why it's R, and I love it. This makes the movie. In the theater, when I watched this whole thing go down, I noticed that my eyebrows were raised, my head was like kind of back, I was pushing my head back into my neck, my jaw was a little open. I was like, I could not believe I was actually watching this. Like, is this really happening right now? And yes, it is. And I love that they went that far with it, that it was, again, about sexual organs, essentially, and that it was female. It's very alien. It's very Aliens. And I think it's cool that in Covenant, um, the white aliens kind of come out of wherever they can get out of. We saw one get out of the back. We saw one get out of someone's mouth. And I just sort of like what was being implied there was that we call it a chest burster, but maybe it doesn't always have to come out of the chest. Maybe it's going to get out however it can get out. And that's great because that you never know then how this is going to go down. We've seen a chest burster burst out of a chest how many times now, and especially in all the other media, comics and video games. And so, now there's this element of surprise in the future films that could, you never know how the xenomorph is going to emerge and how much of a violent surprise that'll be. This is also kind of you could read into this thinking this is very pro-abortion. No comment. It is exhausting how most of our film and even our TV shows now are super political. So I never get that sense out of Ridley Scott, which is really ironic because he's taking sort of non-mainstream ideas like this. This whole Prometheus film seems to be making a case for some element of creationism. Interventionist evolution. Evolutionary interventionism, I guess you could call it. Maybe not exactly creationism. That is so great. There's something about that. These thick latex gloves slapping you cold. You can just feel it. Ugh. And how she pinches her, and I don't know why she is not totally doped when David totally doped her, but sure. Yeah, here we go. God, this is great. This is so great. There was sadly not a scene like this, not a set piece horror, body horror scene like this in Covenant that was shocking. There was nothing in Covenant that shocked me. And on that merit alone, Prometheus is the better film. Ridley Scott really did surprise the shit out of me with this. And it was great. And it just, we just kind of got... Covenant did not screw up. It did not take nearly enough risk either. It played it safe, and that was probably because of all the shit that Prometheus got for not being a carbon copy of the 1979 Alien film. When you focus test these things, you can just run them into the ground. And when you're doing a reboot or a quasi reboot or a soft reboot, The Force Awakens is literally like the exact same plot as A New Hope, beat for beat. Just they rearrange the furniture. This belly dancing she's doing is very impressive. And I have never seen anything like this in any movie before, and I don't think I'm ever going to again. Which is great because it's specific to this movie. It's specific to Alien. It makes total sense. It's totally sci-fi. It's totally sci-horror. It's just so alien. I mean, this tops what was in Alien. This is Prometheus. This is a real, genuine, original moment. Uh, oh, God. And it falls into her. All that extra stuff. Ugh. Oh, God. Pulling that umbilical. Now, the only problem I have with this is just like, as this squid thing is moving around, it totally just looks like an animatronic flopping around. I just don't buy it. But I'll go with it, sure. I mean, it's held in there, it's anchored, but it needed to really just rock the thing a lot more to really. It needed to have more of its own drive against the machine. I love that. Shouting, come on. Because Ripley shouted, come on, in the elevator. But it's great, because we're all thinking that. she just, she entered some code there. But yeah, it seemed more like she was just mashing buttons. I don't like the practical Fifield hangar fight. They shot this, or they, I guess, rendered this, or no, yeah, they did shoot it twice in two different ways. One was fully CG, whole different shoot, and then the other was actually with him doing all of this. To me, the CG shoot was scarier. The CG Fifield was way scarier than this. Way scarier than this. And much like the sort of failed makeup of Wayland, I just sort of was like, it's a guy in a suit. Yeah, he's got makeup on. And especially once I saw the concept art and then the cut with the other CG. I mean, his head was huge and his eye was out to the side, and it just that head crush though, that's pretty good. You really feel the force of that. I like these 2001 suits here. Honestly, the trailer, I think it might have been the international trailer. Sometimes I just watch that. It's so good. They got like energy weapons there. Energy bullet guns. Electroballistic. That's what I'd call it. I like this, like, this is great. And now she's like high and it's a little floaty and a little surreal. And then we start to wonder, like, is she actually seeing Wayland? But even though we know she really is, it makes, that door is not sealed. It's not airtight. We can see right through it. It makes, I love this shot of her falling there. Westworld ripped that off. Now, why does David look confused? Because she got out? Maybe David thought, well, okay. Maybe he thought, well, if she goes into cryo, we'll take her back and we'll get it out and she'll be safe and fine. And so maybe he's genuinely concerned, like, why did she do this to herself? Yeah. His feet. Ugh. how thin Fassbender is in this. It was a little jarring to see David thicker as Fassbender is now, and especially after probably bulking up for Assassin's Creed. But I think Fassbender was more muscular in Inglourious Bastards, so he really slimmed down for this. And I liked that Walter was a little bulkier, but it would have been great if they could have figured that out, with the shoot. If he could have lost that, or if he could have, they could have just, CG'd him to be thinner. I think they cut the scene where he's in dreams and young to keep the mystery, so that when Wayland is revealed here, we would it would be a surprise. That's unfortunate because that would have been a really cool shot or scene, and now that surprise is only worth one viewing, and then for the rest of everyone's lives, they know the the little twist there, which isn't really even that much of a twist. So I wish we would have gotten it. That would have been great. Yeah, I guess like Covenant just, like I said, it just played it safe. It was very effective in doing that. I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of critics are going to be let down, think it's meh. But I love this universe, and I love its vibe, and it spawned a whole genre of space horror. Like in this way, in this super sharp, dark, believable way, with corporate interests and conspiracy. Uh, this does feel contrived to me, though, that he's now going to be a hero. If he was a former Marine, I think he was. I think there was a featurette where he was in the military, so then I would believe it. But if he's basically just you know, a, the best of the best pilots on, this sort of personal private jet pilot of Peter Wayland, not sure I really buy that he would decide to kill himself for the greater good. And since it's not in the movie and we really don't know, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think this makeup's that bad. I think it's the fact that we know it's Guy Pearce under there. Which it just breaks the illusion. I mean, and because we didn't have that scene, that's what spurred all the criticism. Why did you cast Guy Pearce, this Adonis, to play an old 80, 90-year-old man, you know, or 120-year-old man. Why didn't you get like Max von? Oh, God, I don't. If I Googled it, I'd know it. I don't know. Can't remember his last name. That's great. It's your fault, and I guess he knows that. I guess he's figured that out. Here's that line. It's amazing. She's she just had a C-section and now she's suiting up. Sure. Now, I don't really, it's been years since I've read Spates' original script, but I think what happens is they resurrect an engineer who was already infected, which is why he was in cryo, and outbursts a ultra xenomorph, a xenomorph based on these giants' DNA. So the resulting xenomorph was even taller, because the xenomorph from humans is like 14 feet tall or something like that. So we ended up, by the end of the script, you know, this xenomorph was like 30 feet tall or something. And oh man, I really wish we could have seen that. That would have been so awesome. The thing could have burst out of there in a chase and then, you know, tried to rip apart the ship, you know? Or, you know, their escape could have been on the derelict, but you still could have had the final chase with the giant xenomorph because the engineers were giants, so the whole ship is so much bigger than it is here. Like, you know, that entrance archway should have been at least another 10 feet taller. He wanted to do all of this practical, I guess, or as much as possible, and you know, I can respect that, but honestly, I think the CG is getting pretty damn good at this point, and your ultimate goal is to tell a story, not to really shoot in a real alien chamber that's actually a soundstage and is actually completely fake. George Lucas would, you know, say that too. He's like, everybody's like, everything's all fake, you know, it's all CG, and he's, or I think James Cameron said that or something. He's like, it's all fake. Yeah, it was James Cameron who said that. Yeah, it's 100% fake. You think it's this concrete wall and it's really just a wooden board that's been painted, and you go behind it and there's an electrician running cable with his ass crack hanging out of his pants, you know, like I think that's, to paraphrase James Cameron. And so, you know, after the magic of having Ian McKellen as Gandalf and Frodo being tiny, you know, they totally could have done that, and they did it in a different way here. They did it with camera angles and but look at that. Like I can tell that's a human man. I can tell the scale. Look at that. He looks tiny compared to the humans are taller than he is in this shot. And it's not it's the perspective. I know that's not actually true, but it's a, you know, they failed to even fake it with perspective. You know what's interesting? Are those suits? Are those actually part of the engineer's body? Is that little moment there trying to tell us that this engineer is actually an android like David? Because in Covenant, we go to their world and we see, presumably, more of this species. They kind of look the same, but they looked a lot more human like than this guy does. So, wow, that's a new kind of connecting the dots there from the new movie. All right, big shake up at Wayland Corp. This is probably the reason that it becomes Wayland Yutani. That actor was in something else too. Can't place it. I'm searching my memory. The giant penis gun cockpit. Get it? Cockpit? I almost wonder if it was literally that line of thinking that led to the design of that. Because it pretty much is literally that. So Giger had a trick, all right. Yeah, this is really cool. The where this kind of gets ridiculous is, and they showed this in the behind the scenes, that this whole donut wheel, rolling frisbee, where they don't just run to the side and get out of its way, they run in line with the rolling frisbee. That was directly Ridley Scott's idea. And I think he even said something like, oh, that's why I get the big bucks. Something to that extent. Like, he just thinks in those terms and, kind of visual gimmicks and concepts that can become iconic, except it was just massively dumb of these characters as we're watching them do it. I don't know if this is actually a thing in how to write a horror film, if part of it is in a meta contextual sense watching characters make dumb decisions. I mean, that does happen all the time. It happens in like movies like Friday the 13th, and like we sort of expected of that, but of elite, scientist astronauts, you would think they don't do such stupid things. They don't all start slinking off on their own, getting picked off one by one when they know there's a killer out there. Yeah, I guess if I'm in that cockpit and I'm like, yeah, we're light years from Earth, and what we're going to do is going to save Earth. Okay. How many people get that kind of chance to to do something that important? But I also wonder, humans being humans, if it really was you in that seat and your captain was like, I'm going to ram the ship and kill us. Do you want out or not? I'd be like, well, yeah, I guess I'll bow out. I will tell everybody how awesome you are. Oof. This is cool. Something, I don't know if they ever say father to the AI on board the ship there who's doing the countdown. But that's an interesting idea that they call him father and Wayland is here, and I always thought this was unsatisfying how this ship crashes into it like that, how it's just kind of off. It's really bothered me every time I watch it. But anyway, then Mother is in the next in Covenant, and it's uh, David says he's waiting for Mother for the eggs. So there's a little theme there. And yeah, this would be cool if they just moved, if they just got out of the way, or if there was some reason they couldn't just run out of the way. They had plenty of time to go 40 yards to either side and get out of the way. Yeah. What's funny too is in Covenant, there's a lot that was in the trailer that's not in the movie. Seems this is a thing going on more and more now. Is I think what's going on is, especially the bigger the budget, they're shooting more. It's cheaper to shoot now because we're shooting digital. So they can do all of these alternate takes, and they can maybe have possible like branching versions of the script or of certain scenes or things, and that's pretty cool though to be crushed by that giant ship. Yeah, she is now centimeters tall, reduced to liquid. But anyway, yeah, that they can shoot all of this stuff and pick and choose what goes into the trailer, and sometimes maybe even shoot things for the trailer. So a shot like that where they're running from the donut could have been in the trailer, but could have been cut from the film. Maybe that if this was made today, maybe that's what would have happened. I really like how we sort of think when they go into the derelict that that's going to be the finale, and then they escape and they crash the ship, and is that the finale? And then the ship lands on top of her and she crawls out from under it, and now what? And she's going to go to the lifeboat, and is that the finale? Does she get out from there? And it keeps going, and I love that because it keeps surprising us with more and more. We're coming back to the big squid, the proto chestburster, and I was waiting for that to happen in Covenant. I thought the way they killed the xenomorph was too easy, which made the xenomorph not scary. That's not, Ridley Scott always complained that the beast is cooked. He's not scary anymore. Well, yeah, good job. You made him not scary. And you were supposed to be the only one that actually had made him scary, apart from the team at Creative Assembly on Alien Isolation. They made him scary. Yeah, he was no different than the white alien in terms of what he brought to the movie, the black xenomorph, and it's just so disappointing. And the way they killed him, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful set piece ending, last battle, but Catherine Watterson saying, "Let's kill this fucker," all of a sudden, when I just don't buy it from her. And I would have bought it from Noomi Rapace, though, at that point, after her character had evolved for some time. Yeah, so the scariest scenes had nothing to do with the xenomorph. And after Daniels is in the cryotube and sealed in, tucked in, I was expecting there'd be something else, and there wasn't. But if they're going to start shooting the next film in a year, well, then I can kind of give it a bit of a pass then, because unlike Prometheus, where this was the first legit alien film since Aliens, really, and really since 1979 for Ridley Scott, that this seemed much more of a bigger deal. This is so cool. But, if we're going to get a new Alien movie every 2 years now instead of every 5 years, even 5 years is still good compared to what it used to be, then these things are starting to be much more episodic. And so Covenant doesn't have to be everything. But I really appreciate Prometheus for being very complete. It has surprise after surprise after surprise. I think the concept artist who designed this proto facehugger called it an ode to vaginas. Well, and here it is. We're gonna get, maybe this is how we get the Ultramorph. That's what they called it. So I don't know if we're gonna return to LV-223. 233, so I don't know. Whatever planet this is that isn't LV-426, which was also confusing. It's almost like if this, he sold this first film as, this could be potentially just one. We'll start as this is just a prequel to Alien, and then maybe it goes off. Well, if it was just going to do that, then this should have been LV-426. And they should have used something else to fly off and meet the engineers other than the derelict. But instead, this is really not at all a direct prequel to Alien. This is several films back, especially after Covenant. We have to somehow get a derelict onto LV-426 and get David's xenomorphs on it too. Presumably, David will be, his remains will be on LV-426 in that derelict. Presumably, he's what brought his own brand of eggs to that planetoid. Why? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe there's a alien race there that he wiped out. I do really love this girl and her robot. Girl and her decapitated robot pal carrying around this robot head in a duffel bag. It's like there's a kind of a storybook charm to that. As for as storybook as you can get in the Alien franchise. It's funny, he gets stabbed with a cross by Daniels in the next film. And the fact that Daniels has a cross on, also is odd. And like, it's funny, they copy Ripley all the time. And now Daniels is copying Shaw when they don't talk about Daniels being religious at all. It was Billy Crudup who was the supposed pariah Christian on board. And I didn't notice it, but I guess she's wearing that cross the whole time. But like, they don't talk about that at all. They don't make it a point that you and I are, Billy Crudup and Daniels, that you and I are the only ones on board that believe. And she throws him a bone to make him feel better, knowing that he's not fit to be a leader, saying, we need your faith, not our faith. So the fact that she had that cross on, she essentially, had Shaw's cross on? I don't know. Maybe I need to go see that again and find out if she picked up Shaw's cross. I just didn't notice. And that's what she stabs David with. They changed that. It was originally, and you're a fucking robot. They changed it because it just seemed unnecessarily cruel when there's no reason for her to be. And I agree with that change. I like it that she she says she's sorry then, so she clearly has respect for him. But yeah, it was odd. This planet could have looked more alien-ish, and by alien I mean just otherworldly. It didn't need to look like an amalgamation of, elements from Earth, mountains and clouds, and this just looks like it could have been Earth. But I suppose that's part of the point he's making too. So, just from a design standpoint, it still could have been Earth-like, but had just some more unique design to it. So, but that's Prometheus, and I'm, just now I'm satisfied watching it. And yes, even, again, we talk about how it keeps going. There's more and more surprises for you. And they call him the Deacon, which was not the Ultramorph. I think he was supposed to be, I don't know. The Ultramorph concepts, he was this blue-gray. So maybe, I don't know, maybe he's the Deacon and the Ultramorph. This is his, and the sort of the design of the white alien that we see. I don't know. Is that what they're doing? Why is he blue then? Well, anyway, I think he does have. No, he doesn't have eyes. But there were concepts where he had eyes, like in some of Giger's other paintings of the xenomorph. But so yeah, so on LV 223, I think, on this planet, there's a Deacon running around. Are we ever going to come back to that? Are we ever going to come back and see a 30-foot tall xenomorph? That would be awesome. I hope we do. But God, like, then how do we get back to LV-426 with a derelict, and how many times do we have to circle around to get things that we missed that unnecessarily so. I was just really disappointed that we didn't get to see that, but yeah, my computer just went to sleep there. But yeah, that's Prometheus, and I've got to say, I like it even more now. It's so I have a theme going with my commentaries. I just did Ghost in the Shell from 1995. That was the first commentary. Followed up here with Prometheus after seeing Alien Covenant, and when I did the 95 commentary of Ghost in the Shell, that was when I did the when I did the commentary of the 95 Ghost in the Shell, that was after seeing the 2017 Rupert Sanders Ghost in the Shell. And so this kind of interesting way of doing a commentary of, we just saw this new movie, now let's go back and analyze what how this changes the context of the old movie. And I'm really enjoying that. I don't think that'll be something I'm doing every episode, but with the rate that they're rebooting things, I would say it's possible. Yeah. So Covenant was, in my view, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more the second time than the first time. I was definitely disappointed the first time, but it didn't fuck up like Rupert Sanders' Ghost in the Shell did. I left the theater with Ghost in the Shell 2017 feeling like it fucked up. That it had all of this great design, and it had this great actress, who seemed to really fit the role very well, and it didn't know what the hell it was trying to say. It was just putting snapshot iconic moments from all of Ghost in the Shell together in a sort of hodgepodge way then that had cognitive dissonance. And because Rupert Sanders, I don't think he has the depth. I don't think he has the capacity to direct at the depth that Ridley Scott does. And so, while Alien Covenant wasn't as deep as Prometheus, and we didn't spend hardly as much time with the characters and getting to know them as Prometheus, I think it was a sort of, I'm sorry, let's try to fix this. Here you go. Here's the movie you wanted. I'll do that. You can have that. And then after that, we're gonna kind of go back to the plan of this. Really, Alien is now merged with Prometheus as two separate franchises, essentially part of the same universe. And now we've brought them back together under the Alien banister. And that's my prediction. The next movie is supposedly going to be a prequel to Covenant, but a sequel to Prometheus that reveals what happened to Shaw and sort of the journey that David and Shaw go on and what happens, so possibly with the engineers and things like that. So it's a direct sequel to Prometheus. So I think they're kind of sticking to the plan. And I would say that what Covenant was an attempt to basically reboot the first Alien with a lot of the ideas, and especially David from Prometheus, and essentially merge the franchises, reconcile them in a way, and allow them to go off in their own direction. And it might have been a sort of trick too, to kind of, if the story Ridley Scott really wants to tell is this, evolutionary interventionism idea, and he, maybe the way to do it was to kind of say, okay, we're starting from Alien, but we're going to go off and become Prometheus, and that'll be a whole new franchise. Maybe that was a mistake, but I don't think this film was a mistake at all, Ridley. This was a great film. And it had a lot of great ideas, and I don't know. I guess you might have to really be into this stuff, but, my wife really likes this film, and she was kind of let down with Covenant. And, when you haven't seen Alien and you're seeing it for the first time in, 2014 or 2015, like she did, I think we watched it together when we were playing Alien Covenant, or Alien Isolation. it's an old movie now, so it kind of falls a bit flat. So for her, it's a unique experience of seeing these out of time and out of step, but who knows where it's going. All right, so that's my commentary for Prometheus after having seen Alien Covenant. I had a lot of fun with this. I feel like I have more to say, and I kind of ran out of time, but I'll do a commentary on Covenant once that comes out, and we'll jump right back into it. So, yeah, this is Xander Davis, and you can check out my portfolio of graphic design and user interface design for video games, where I freelance worldwide to studios at xanderdavis.com, xanderdavis.com. You can check out my fiction writing, especially Umbra, my project Umbra, which is kind of my own riff on Lovecraftian sci-fi space horror, using instead of spaceships, they're using psychic remote projection to go through the cosmos and amongst dimensions to find all sorts of otherworldly horrors there. So you can check that out at loremethod.com, Lore method.com. And all sorts of other stuff too. I'm working on a video game project, as I mentioned, at starbase24.games. Check that out. That's a sub-brand of my indie game studio brand, Astrogun, at astrogun.com. Got a lot going on. But I'm having a blast doing it. And between, splitting my time between all my projects and freelancing, it's just been awesome. So, yeah, if you've got a game project or any kind of project that might need graphic design, UI, or world building, writing of any kind, I've written screenplays even for cinematics and video games and stuff. So all sorts of things that you could, if you'd like to hire me, I'd definitely be interested in chatting with you about it. So yeah, all right, that's it for today, guys. Have fun. Take care.